Thank you for listening to the Solanos Stories, a companion to the Smithsonian's traveling exhibit, Crossroads, Change in Rural America, presented in downtown Trinidad, Colorado. Solanos Stories salutes the farmers, ranchers, cowboys, and cattlemen who helped shape the Southwest, and their trusty hats. Dennis Williams, written by Lewis L. Williams. In late spring of 1995, myself and a good friend Bill Ryan were day riding for Dry Creek Cattle Company, west of Delta, Colorado. We'd spent the last couple of weeks there in cattle from headquarters, where they'd wintered and cabbed to Escalante Forks, where they'd go up on top of the Uncompahgre Plateau for the summer. This day we were training a pretty good-sized bunch of pairs up onto the dry mesa where the summer country started. There were 7 cowboys, including Bill and me, because the trail up the mesa was real steep and narrow. The cattle had to go single file most of the way, plus it was pretty brushy. I was riding a young Hancock-bred gelding called TJ, and was the second or third guy to get to the top. We dropped the cattle in the park a little ways from the rim so they could mother up. While we were waiting for the rest of the cattle and cowboys to show up, I got off to loosen my cinch and clean the sticks and leaves out from under my blankets. It wasn't too long, and everybody was in the park, horses rested and cattle paired up and going on about their business. The cow boss, Ron Cole, says, "Let's get out of here." So we head back down that nasty old trail. As we were headed down, Ron, Bill, and Mike Duder were in front of me, and Jack Musser, J.T. Calhoun, and Roxy Davis were behind me. I noticed that my bridle reins were starting to get longer. I studied this phenomenon for a moment, then said to myself, "You forgot to tighten your cinch, idiot." At this point in the trail it was too steep and narrow to fix the problem, but just a few yards ahead the trail switched back because of a deep draw that cut the side of the mesa. It was a good, wide, flat spot where the guys behind me could go on by and I could get my rig squared away. Just as we hit the flat spot, TJ, who was aware of our problem as well, decided that a saddle sliding up on his neck was legitimate enough excuse to blow up. So he bogged his head and went at it. We bucked through a clump of scrub oak to the edge of the draw, decided that we didn't like the looks of that, so we turned back, crashed through the oak brush again, and onto the trail. Just as we were about to go bucking off down the next steep leg of the train, I decided that TJ would probably have a much more enjoyable trip if I wasn't along to cramp his style. So I swung a leg over and checked out, bounced off a boulder, and hit flat on my back up against the front feet of Jack's horse. When I looked up, Jack was looking down at me with a big grin on his face. I guess he was just happy that I didn't trip his horse. I stood up just in time to see TJ go roaring past Mike and Bill, who were at that very moment discussing how inconvenient it would be to have a colt blow up and go to bucking on a trail such as this. By the time we reached the bottom, TJ had discarded my saddle and was headed for the forks. Ron was up ahead and was able to cut him off and bring him back as I hiked to the bottom, gathering my saddle and blankets on the way. After resaddling, making sure to tighten the cinch, we headed back to the Escalante Forks for dinner. I was a touch on edge, but I was a perfect gentleman for the rest of the day. This story doesn't have much to do with this old hat, other than to say that at no time during this little adventure did it ever leave my head.